Alright, in this video we're going to talk about the model 1911 45 automatic pistol. Fact, fiction, bullshit. It seems that when people started talking about FUDs, boomers, and this, they keep bringing up the 1911 because they say a lot of FUDs say that this is the best pistol ever made. It's more superior to any of their favorite handguns and all this other stuff. Well, we have to kind of look at how the gun was developed. And there is another thing. We're dealing a lot with society, psychology, and just a whole bunch of different factors. And whenever you discuss anything with people, be it guns, cars, health insurance, you're going to get varying opinions and some sort of an argument. But anyway, several people, I said something, I'd make a video talking about all the myths around this. And this is another iconic weapon, okay? Be it the 1911, the Luger, the Glock, whatever. All of these guns are extremely popular. People love them, people hate them, or whatever. But then again, you hear some crazy stories about them. So we're going to do our beloved 1911. Now the thing is, this gun was in service for 85 years, I believe, with the United States military. I was issued a gun like this, or trained on it, and that's what we had on my ship. So a lot of veterans or people that were in the military were exposed to this weapon. And there's a whole slew of stories because it's easily recognizable. Everyone knows what it is. During World War II, half the male population was in the service, okay? So that's where you get a lot of these stories. So where this gun came into was the United States Army tried adopting revolvers, 38 caliber revolvers in the 1890s, and it didn't quite work out. So they started a program where they were looking for a new handgun and also a caliber suitable. Okay, that was the big problem. Was they were not happy with the caliber 38 long Colt or what was out there. So in 1904, the Army had the Thompson-Lagarde test, is where they went and took sides of beef and actually went and found unclaimed bodies or whatever, and did an experiment of shooting tests to check out the lethality of different handgun cartridges. And in this test, and it's widely publicized, and whenever you read an article or the history of this gun, this test has been brought up. And the one thing about this test is when they got done with the test, they decided that the military needed a pistol in caliber 45 minimum, okay? And they said that they wanted a handgun powerful enough to stop a horse, okay? And that's what I've heard numerous times, because I don't know if that was in the report. When you look it up online, it isn't there, but I remember in gun magazines and articles discussing the history of this gun, they said from that test they wanted a pistol that could stop a horse, or that was somebody's opinion, but that was a thing that was thrown in there. And this is where these tall tales of how powerful this weapon is started. Okay? So at the time they adopted, at the time in 1904 when they come up with this, John Browning was designing all kinds of guns. He had semi-automatic pistols that were either in, it'd be like 38 Super or something like along those lines. He had a model 1900, 1902, 1905, I think even a 1908. And in modifying these guns and coming up with all these different designs, he came up with this design, And he also, because the Army specified 45 caliber pistol, they also, with the ammunition companies, worked around and made the 45 ACP, which we all know and love, okay, which is here, as compared to what, was the standard 45 to 45 Colt. Now you notice the ACP is smaller. It's slightly less powerful than the 45 long Colt, but fits in to an automatic pistol, which is more rapid loading and rapid firing, so that's where they went with it. So, now we got a pistol, we got a gun, it's powerful enough, supposedly in the lore, powerful enough to stop a charging horse, which, a horse is a big animal, it's pretty powerful. So that's where it started. Okay, and then another source, that's your power myths, and I'll go over them. And another source was during the war, in World War I, they produced these guns, and they were exceptional quality, well fitted, and much nicer than what happened in World War II. But what happened when the war ended is they canceled all the manufacturers' contracts, which kind of left them in a lurch. Fast forward 20 years later, World War II, everyone's in a panic. They're trying to find people to make these guns that are not normally gun makers, and a lot of the companies that made them kind of got burned the last time around and wouldn't take the contracts. So in World War II, it was a mass panic. They bombed Pearl Harbor. They needed guns made. And so henceforth, out of all the companies that made them, Ithaca, and I fired period gun made from Ithaca. That company, I think, was the one that produced the most, and it was given machinery from one company, and it was given a lot of leftover parts, okay, from other companies from World War I, from them contracts they canceled. They had all kinds of frames or different bits and pieces, so they gathered them all up, took them to one company, dumped them off, wanted them to start building pistols. Immediately there was a crisis. So you had a lot of guns that weren't fitted well, or, not really, they'd go off and they'd function, but they weren't put together to precision, like. And I remember an old gun dealer told me, whenever you go get surplus guns, okay, he told me what you would do is take the gun, clear the weapon, make sure it's cocked, then make sure all the grease is out of it and it's clean, and then rattle it. You can hear a little bit of a rattle there. And there is a tad bit of play. I'd say about 1,000's play in this gun. Okay? Where you can get a custom-made gun that is so tight that there's no rattling or nothing, but then again, any dirt or grease would jam your gun. So, with any firearm, the tighter the tolerances, the closer to fit, the more accurate it is, but it could have a problem with reliability. Okay? The looser the gun is, the slide play, barrel play, the looser the gun is, the more reliable it'll be. In other words, it will go off, okay? It may not be accurate. And that's where our other huge myth came from, these World War II early production guns, because some of these guns that were in service are junk. You can't shoot worth a damn, and they're highly inaccurate. But that's where the big myth. These guns will function no matter what. In the mud, in the rain, in the sands of Iwo Jima or whatever, the gun will always go off. And that's where one of the big myths about the reliability came in. I used to hear that. No matter what, he goes, you could take this gun, throw it in the mud, jump up and down on it, pick it up, and it would still go off. And what it was is I fired one of them wartime production guns from Ithaca that, the barrel, what it was is it was so loose, it was either made that way or wasn't made quite tight and fired, and then it loosened the link, and the barrel was not locking into the pistol. The bushing could have been wobbled out or screwed up, but what it was is every time you fired it, when the gun locked back up, the barrel was moving in one way or the other, and I mean it was highly inaccurate. It went off all the time, it never jammed, it's just you couldn't shoot, you couldn't hit anything with it at 10 feet. So this is where some of our wild tales come from. And I've had a couple emails from people, and now that you know kind of the manufacturing end of it, we'll discuss the different wild stories that we heard. Okay, the earliest story I've heard personally was from an old World War I veteran that somehow became a stretcher bearer, and what they gave him was he had a partner, so two of them carried the stretcher, and they had a .45 pistol, and that was it. That was all they had out there in no man's land. And he said that, he used to have to guard the food wagon by standing there and holding the gun up like this as he marched alongside it, had the pistols drawn and pointed upwards. He never shot the gun at anyone, but he said that's what he carried. He talked highly of it. He said it was modern, it was a big caliber. You can take it apart with no tools, and he goes slick as hell. You can reload it quick and shoot 7 rounds off as fast as you can pull the trigger. So, in actuality, this gun was something special back then, back in 1911, 1918. It was kind of used, some of the gangsters, when they raided National Guard armories, had these pistols. I think Bonnie and Clyde, they had one of these in there. And I don't know if John Dillinger preferred to have one. They were considered, for the time, compared to like 38 Colts and that, a very powerful gun. And the fact that it's semi-automatic and clip-fed and you can reload it quicker than you could a revolver kind of gave you an edge. So it became popular in gangster movies, and I think the radio show, The Shadow Knows, or something, there was a character, and I believe he was portrayed wearing a mask and carrying 245s, okay? That was the thing, 2 guns blazing. So that was popular back in the Depression era. And like I said, once we got into the war, that's where we got some of these guns assembled from all these odd parts, and the crisis of the war in the beginning and not having production up to speed. There were some of these guns that come out that were pretty crappy. Now this gave way to the fact that the gun would function under any conditions, was most reliable and everything. And I heard these stories for years, okay, about this weapon.